この国を救いに来た。俺の名はドン・キホーテ・ド・フラミンゴ。
Doflamingo awakened his Haushiko haki when he was 10 years old, which resulted in knocking out a crowd that was torturing him. For young people, Virgo, Treble, Diamante, and Pica, who would be the future elite officers of Doflamingo's crew, were awed by the rise of one whom they thought deserved to be their new king. Treble gave Doflamingo the authority to be their monarch and to kill anyone who disobeyed him in the form of the Ito Ito no Mi in an obsidian black handgun with luxurious gold plating, which is shown as an ordinary gun in the anime. The Ito Ito no Mi is a paramecia-type devil fruit that grants its user the ability to create and manipulate strings, transforming them into a string human. It was consumed by the former warlord of the sea, Donquixote Doflamingo. The fruit's abilities were demonstrated, briefly, in the Geoise arc. Later, they were shown in detail during the Dressrosa arc. 1. Strength of Ito Ito no Mi. As per Doflamingo's own admission, the Ito Ito no Mi, or the string fruit, is a versatile devil fruit that bestows the power to create and manipulate innumerable strings, turning the user into a string human. The strings in question are generally white, extremely thin, and exceedingly sharp. While the user generally extrudes strings from their palms and fingertips, they can be summoned from any part of their body. The user can also attach themselves to clouds for aerial transportation. Usually, it is unclear if there is any limit to the length and number of strings that can be produced. In addition, the strings can also attach to virtually anything, including non-solid substances such as clouds. As a consequence of how thin the strings are, it is nigh on impossible to see them or guard against attacks. Doflamingo's use of this devil fruit incorporated a wide range of applications, highlighting how he had developed several creative purposes for his string manipulation. The sharpness of Doflamingo's strings granted him a wide range of offensive maneuvers. From slicing off the arm of a huge giant such as Little Ors Jr., to cutting enemy weapons, or dicing up entire meteorites, the Ito Ito no Mi's cutting power is nothing short of astounding. Doflamingo was able to boost this further by imbuing his strings with armament haki, which allowed them to bypass other devil fruit powers and cut through targets with even more efficiency. Doflamingo himself stated that his devil fruit abilities saved him from certain death after having his internal organs severely wounded by Trafalgar D. Waterlaw's lethal attack. He referred to them as versatile. Additionally, the strings can be Busashoku haki infused, which increases their power and enables them to defeat devil fruit-based defenses. The strings have such incredible tensile strength and durability that very few objects or people can cut, tear, or otherwise harm them. However, it is possible to snap off the bodily control of Parasite. The majority of those who are unaware of Doflamingo's power lose all awareness of how their bodies are going against their will. At the same time, the thread's thinness makes it nearly impossible to notice them with the naked eye, making it very difficult to avoid their path. The Ito Ito no Mi strings are so sharp that Doflamingo can easily sever the flesh and bone of a giant, as well as firearms, and also, reinforced concrete, all without the use of Busashoku haki. The Ito Ito no Mi has the capacity to be awakened, like any paramecia. The power of the fruit, once awakened, enables the user to transform the environment, including the ground and nearby structures, into strings as well, which they can use for much more powerful assaults and defense. That was demonstrated throughout the battle with Luffy at Dressrosa. Considering how he had complete mastery over his devil fruit abilities, Doflamingo also gained access to its awakening, with which he could affect the environment around him and turn it into strings. This allows him to execute attacks on a much larger scale, by altering the surrounding landscape. Break White is one of the fundamental techniques of the Ito Ito no Mi's awakening, where Doflamingo creates two thick sheets of string to bind his opponent and crush them. Taking things one step further, Off-White is an attack that creates two large masses of string from the ground to swipe at an opponent from two different directions. Billow White and Ever White expand the scale of attack even more, by turning entire buildings or large parts of the context into string which can then be directed towards an enemy. Doflamingo has also combined his awakened techniques with haki, which takes the damage dealt by them to a whole new level. Weaknesses, like all other devil fruits in one piece. The Ito Ito no Mi is vulnerable to seawater and sea stone. The latter material can come in quite handy to resist Doflamingo's slashing attacks, as the properties of sea stone, combined with its virtually indestructible nature, allow adversaries to render the Ito Ito no Mi strings ineffective. Another means to counteract the devil fruit strings comes in the form of haki, where users can coat their limbs or weapons in armament haki to resist the Ito Ito no Mi's attacks. Kinemon, Zoro, and Kanjuro were able to harness this to halt Doflamingo's Torikeigo for a time in Dressrosa. Doflamingo also cannot use Sora no Michi in areas with no clouds, restricting his movement through the air. That being said, the Ito Ito no Mi is undoubtedly one of the most adaptable and well-rounded devil fruits, and the immense intellect of its user makes it a formidable prospect to face in battle. In order to manipulate people like puppets, Doflamingo usually bends his fingers to move the strings as he pleases. He has even shown this ability by using Parasite to control dozens of people simultaneously without apparent effort, or by slashing his targets. Doflamingo mainly uses this motor skill manipulation power to force allies or bystanders to engage in combat or even murder one another while he amuses himself by sitting on the sidelines and observing. He can use his string clones in addition to his puppets when dealing with several enemies, using both against a single enemy to set up a 2v1 situation or forcing them to fight alongside him for combo potential. Doflamingo's main offensive skills are to use the strings to cut his opponents and take away their weapons. Additionally, he has the ability to compress the strings to forge objects like a huge whip or even a replica of himself that is able to battle alongside him, moving its mouth and broadcasting his voice so that it appears to be speaking for Torikeigo, which is his ultimate power. In addition to using his strings for attack and defense, Doflamingo can also use them as first aid by stitching together his wounded internal organs. Doflamingo has achieved the extremely unusual phenomenon of awakening by fully mastering his Ito Ito no Mi powers. This increases his range and assault volume by enabling him to turn the terrain and nearby structures into strings for his attacks and defense. Doflamingo usually stays on the ground while using Awakening, molding his strings into razor-sharp attacking tentacles before releasing them down on prey. Also, Yusashoko Haki can be infused into awakened strings to give Doflamingo more offensive capability. Doflamingo has demonstrated the following techniques using his fruit's powers. Parasite string. In most cases, Doflamingo attaches his string to his targets, at least when more than one is targeted. He hooks his strings to his target's spines at the base of their necks and controls their movements like marionettes. The controlled can still move their head, but everything below the neck is under Doflamingo's control, as evidenced by the fact that they can still speak and express their own facial expressions, which contrasts with their forced movements. Doflamingo frequently moves his fingers in a similar way to how a marionette manipulator moves a marionette while controlling people. It visually mimics the marionette cross with a few modifications. Both middle and pinky fingers are extended while the index and ring finger are curved back at the upper digits while the thumb sticks out. It does not seem to be necessary because he can control numerous people at once, which also makes it seem unnecessary, and he was able to control it with both hands in his pockets. While hardly visible, the strings used in this technique are strong enough to completely and instantly disable even the most physically strong opponent, and keep those victims trapped floating in mid-air. Sora no Michi, Sky's Path. Doflamingo maneuvers through the air by tying his ropes to clouds. He attempted to use the method to fly from Dressrosa to Punk Hazard for the first time, but there weren't enough clouds for him to succeed. Gashikido, 5 color strings with 5 strings sticking out of his fingers. Doflamingo swipes his palm to slash his target. The strings at first appear to be merely spider-web white, while shimmering colors can be seen within. This is changed later, making each string one solid different color: red, yellow, green, blue, and purple. Overheat, excess whip string. Doflamingo whips at the target while launching a thick rope consisting of compressed strings from his palm. When used at that range, overheat is powerful enough to rip through a building from the Sky of Green bit all the way to Dressrosa, a distance of many kilometers. Torikeigo, birdcage. This is Doflamingo's supreme technique, in which he unravels previously built string constructs, such as string clones, and uses enormous numbers of strings that shoot towards the sky in the form of concentrated beams. When they reach a certain height, they split apart and rain down in an umbrella-like pattern to cover a large area, even the entirety of Dressrosa. Kyumo no Sugaki, spider's web. This is a defensive technique in which Doflamingo creates a huge web made of string that protects him from incoming projectiles. In the anime, it has been shown that he can also layer them on top of one another. Itanoko, fretsaw, from the heel of his foot, Doflamingo makes a string, and he fastens the other end to his leg. He first holds his opponent down with his arms before sawing off a limb with the taut cord. It is quite difficult to reattach severed limbs since the wound that is created is quite jagged. Break white, Doflamingo creates two large, thick sheets of string that wrap around his opponent and crush them. This was first used during Doflamingo's fight against Law and Luffy, to attack Luffy in midair, but Luffy managed to avoid it, although in the anime it demonstrated some sentience as it continued to attack Luffy after it missed him the first time. Off-white, Doflamingo creates two large masses of strings from the ground near him before swiping at an opponent with them. This was first used to counter Luffy's Gomu Gomu no double culverin in their final fight. God Thread, Doflamingo summons 16 thick Gyusashoku Haki infused bundles of string that form sharp points and sends them at his opponent in a piercing formation. It is possibly a homage to his childhood while he was being tortured, as a father cried out that the celestial dragon shot his son 16 times with a pistol. Doflamingo's cruel way to mock said father, as well as showing how much he desperately wants to regain his title as a world noble. This was first used against Luffy at the end of their final fight, but was broken through by his King Kong gun,